Hello. Welcome to Beloved Blackness with Dr. B. I'm here this week, and I think it'd be important for you to kind of get a sense of how I've ended at this point in my journey in terms of feeling really called to speak to the belovedness of us as African descended persons. So, my kind of maybe one way to do this, kind of talk a little bit about my academic journey. And so, growing growing up and being from the South, I was in spaces through much of my secondary years of predominantly white educational environments, and particularly because in those environments, the quote gifted students were placed in classes that many of other black students either didn't know existed as opportunities for them or weren't encouraged to pursue being placed in those classes. And so there I found myself living in two worlds, kind of as W.B. Du Bois talks about that dual consciousness, that double consciousness, as a young girl having to navigate the spaces of my black friends and then my white classmates in environments that didn't speak much to my experience as a black girl. And so when I decided to major in psychology and went to undergrad at University of Texas in Austin, I found all of my psychology classes really missing speaking to my experience in terms of my blackness. And so then I started searching, looking for classes that would speak to that, and actually just stumbled across the African American Studies. At that time, was a center because it wasn't even funded to be a department, and stumbled across classes there, which felt like just heaven at that time, and really got engaged with learning more about our history, getting engaged, learning more about the ways in which racism is how we worded at the time, but white supremacy domination had impacted how we saw ourselves and the struggle that we were facing, and how to be able to deal with the forces that were opposed to black African liberation. And so was involved actively with the African American Culture Committee on campus, with the Black Students, the BSA, Black Students Alliance. And through that journey, we would go to, the BSA would go to the Third Eye conferences in Dallas, Texas, which were eye-opening conferences where all the heavy hitters in African-centered thinking were coming to just lay out our history, to talk about how we had been miseducated, to re-educate us. Like, to think of it now, I'm just stunned that we had the privilege to go to these Third Eye conferences in Dallas, Texas, to hear John Henrik Clark, Conrad Rural, Naeem Akbar, like all of these very prominent African centered scholars, and be inspired and uplifted. So at one of these, I had a chance to meet Dr. Conrad Rural and talk with him about, I had applied, was about to graduate from undergrad, I had applied to Florida A&M University for the community psychology program, but had also already been accepted to University of Houston's MSW program. And, was telling him just kind of like, oh, it's so expensive to go to Florida. I think I might should just stay in state. And he really encouraged me to call Baba Kobe Cambone. He's like, you call him, at the time is Dr. Baldwin. You call Dr. Baldwin, you tell him I told you to give him a call to see what they can do for you. And so I did. I listened, because raised in the South, I'm going to obey my elder who says, you call him and you tell him. I called Dr. Baldwin and I said, I've been accepted, but man, the out of state tuition is so expensive. I'm not sure. He's like, okay, we can get you a scholarship. I just don't know how much. Just come, just come. And so I ended up pretty much an act of faith going to FAMU, and it was life changing and life affirming, because in that space, to be in a master's program in community psychology at a historically black college and university, HBCU, gave me the opportunity to have my whole self come to life in terms of my cultural self. I could do presentations, use my hands, not be worried about it being something that would be looked down upon. And it was out of that the hunger and love I already had for my people and how I had double majored in African American Studies at UT, but I just didn't know how to connect it to the field of psychology. And it was there that they taught me and trained me how to think through a lens that really saw our African selves as the essence of our identity, and how the Eurocentric lens had really infiltrated the field of psychology and hindered us in understanding what we truly brought to the table as people of African descent. So that I would say, it really, my experience at FAMU really gave birth, and gave me a grounding in understanding African centered psychology. And that's how I end up here today, with a sense of call that what got started there needs to come to a full fruition over the rest of my lifespan, and assisting others in thinking about how we are truly beloved, loved of God, and given something very unique that needs to be uncovered because it's been intentionally hidden, and dusted off, uncovered. I'm just visualizing like taking something out of the ground, like a stone, and dust it off and shine so that we can know how we are to illuminate the world. All right, until next week, we are Beloved Blackness.